I am Councillor Caroline Karimi Govanlu, and I will be chairing the planning meeting today, along with Eleanor Lamming, Vice Chair. On the top table are Chris Rain, Senior Planning Officer, Helen Mellors, myself, Eleanor is Vice Chair, and Leah, she's Democratic Services. We are not expecting a fire drill today, but if the alarm does sound, the fire exits are clearly marked in green. This meeting is being live streamed. Members of the public are welcome to film proceedings as long as they are not disruptive to the conduct of the meeting. If anyone wishes to record this meeting, please identify yourselves now. Thank you. Please can you ensure all mobile phones and electronic devices are turned to silent. Councillors, please do not use your mobile phone whilst the committee is in session. We will have comfort breaks at various times throughout the meeting. If you must use your mobile, then please leave the room. However, you will appreciate that this could result in you not being able to vote on the matter under discussion at the time you leave the room. The order of business is as set out on the agenda. Members of the public can only speak if prior arrangements have been made in accordance with the Council's scheme of public speaking. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker, parish council, with a maximum of 15 minutes per category. Only people who have registered to speak will be able to address the committee. The order will be as follows. The planning officer will present the application. Public speakers will then be asked to present their case, followed by questions from members of the committee to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is parish town council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes for each speaker. This will be followed by questions from members of the committee. Again, these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not to invite the speaker to put further points across. The committee will then discuss and determine the application. Finally, there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents, photographs, etc. at the meeting. Are there any questions before I open the meeting? No, thank you. Can we have declarations of interest? Anna?
Hello, yes, thank you. I think we all as members have an interest in the second item, that is 2023/1531. As the applicant is Broadland District Council, I also have an additional interest as District Councillor for the Brundle ward, as the application's in that ward. So I was present at the Poswick Parish Council meeting when this was discussed, but I did not take part in any part of the discussion.
Any further declarations? I will go to my declaration then. I am declaring an interest as I am chairwoman of Taverham Parish Council and have been involved in parish council meetings where this matter has been discussed, and also meetings with the agent Martin Scott. I am predetermined as I support the application, so will stand down as chairwoman for this item and will take no part in the decision-making process. However, I will speak on the application as ward councillor, but leave the room after I have spoken on the item. Mayor, do you have any apologies for this meeting, please?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Vincent and Councillor Tipple.
Thank you. And can we confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 11th of October? Does everyone agree with those minutes? Would you like to show of hands? Thank you. Right, we go to application 1, which is Taverham, land between Fir Covert Road and Reefham Road in Taverham, and I will leave the meeting and hand the chair to Eleanor.
Thank you, Chair. And now I invite the planning officer, Mr. Chris Rain, to come and present the application.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, so item 1, so we're in Taverham, land between Fir Covert Road and Reefham Road. So in terms of the application type, so it's an outline application, but we're determining access only today. So we have access from Fir Covert Road on the west, and then Reefham Road on the east, and then the link road between the two. It's a mixed-use development, so consisting of residential development up to 1,530 properties, including some living well units, so C2 units, and then there's land for a primary school, a medical community centre, and then a local centre consisting of various uses there that I won't necessarily list now. And then we've got the associated allotments, open space, and so on. So I'll take you through some slides just to give you an idea what the scheme's about. So this is the application site, outlined in red, as you'll know. Broadland Northway to the north of the site there, and then to the south of Marriott. Some slightly more interesting images in due course. So here it is as an aerial shot. So again, Broadland Northway to the north, and then sandwiched between that and Thorpe Marriott to the south. And then this is just showing it in the context of its emerging allocation. So you can see at the very top of that screen, reddy, pinky shade. So that's the emerging allocation in the GNLP. And then just to go through what we have on the table. So that's the illustrative master plan. So key features of it, you've got Broadland Northway marked up there to the north again, east and south Thorpe Marriott. You can see within the centre of that master plan, that kind of local centre, primarily built around the school site, the health hub, which is the kind of medical community centre there to the kind of south of the school site, and then the mixed local centre there. So a kind of strong local centre based around kind of Marriott's Way, which you can see that runs on a kind of north-south axis through the middle of the site. You can see marked up either end of the site the two roundabouts. So you have one in the top right hand of the image onto the Reefham Road there, and then to the far left of the image onto Fir Covert Road. Some of the other key features of the master plan is on the kind of western side. You can see on that image marked up as a living well units. So that's looking at the C2 units of over 55s with specialist care. And then south of that, as you come in on the Fir Covert Road end, you have land marked up there on the image, community sort of sport land for Taverham Parish Council. Their ultimate aspiration is to kind of move and have an office on there along with a mugger and potentially a 3G pitch. Then just moving east along from that, you've got the kind of allotments there that are accessed off kind of Breck Farm Lane. And then probably the other key things to just take off that are you can sort of see some of those non-vehicular access points on the kind of eastern boundary which connect into Thorpe Marriott, Felsham Way and Ganners Hill. So we'll just move through some photographs just to give you a flavour of what the site is like. So we're on the Reefham Road there. You can just see it marked up, hopefully with where roughly the new roundabout will go into the site. And then if we just move along the Reefham Road there, you can sort of see the application site on the left-hand side of the image. And then again, for some of you who know Broadland Northway, you can see that marked up, and then the earth bund, which runs along that kind of northern perimeter of the site. So again, we'll just kind of move round, just showing the extent of the bund, give you an idea of height. And then this is just looking back the other direction. Again, probably key thing to pick up there is marked up is just the kind of tree belt that runs along the existing perimeter of Thorpe Marriott. So the idea is that will be kept. And then just moving into Thorpe Marriott itself, just to go back to my earlier point about just some of those connections. So they're non-vehicular. You can just about see from that image they're presently operational now, but they'll be kind of formalised and upgraded as part of the application. And then again, the same for kind of Ganners Hill. So if we jump over to the kind of western perimeter of the site, so similar to the Reefham Road slide, just showing you the Fir Covert Road, you've got the kind of garden centre on the left-hand side there, and then we're just marked up showing where the new roundabout will go in to serve the western side of the development. And then again, just looking back from the alternative direction, back towards sort of Taverham and the traffic lights. And then just moving out along Covert Road to sort of Broadland Northway again, just giving you a view over the site. And then the left-hand side of the image, the sort of existing earth bund. And then just moving round, showing it from a slightly different angle. And then just looking along Broadland Northway, showing the earth bund. Same again, and then you can just see the bridge that allows the Marriott's Way to cross over Broadland Northway. And then just into the side from kind of Breck Farm Lane, just showing the extent of the site, and it's just made up of agricultural land. And then this slide is really just to show, based on the last one, because we're looking at the access and link road through the site, just how that navigates and crosses Marriott's Way. So you will hopefully see from the kind of images there at the top, and then the one on the right hand side, that it's navigating through a point that minimises any kind of tree loss, and also has regard to kind of the various level changes that exist across Marriott's Way, and avoiding too significant a change. And then again, we're just down at Breck Farm Lane, which is another non-vehicular access point into the residential development. And then along to kind of Hinks Meadow. So that is really just showing the existing community facility. So Taverham Football Club presently play there, as you can see on the sign. The other side of that tree belt in the image is the land that the parish are ultimately going to take for their new office building, mugger, and potentially kind of 3G pitch. So really just go through some kind of further bits. So again, just as a reminder of what we've got, that's the sort of indicative master plan for the site. I'll just take you through some of the components of the application in a bit more detail now. So that's really looking at the roundabouts onto either road. So you can see quite a lot of work has gone into the kind of technical side of it. So they're kind of fully drawn up and spec'd roundabouts because we're considering them at this stage. You'll be aware from the update sheet that the Highway Authority has now listed a full list of planning conditions, which will kind of be based upon this particular arrangement. And then again, just looking at that side of things, this is really just to show some of those kind of connection points. So the two orange circles are the two roundabouts we've just kind of seen, and then the kind of pink circles are really looking at kind of cycling and pedestrian links through into the site. So again, really trying to go strong on some of those kind of connections and sustainable travel and so on. The three blue dots on the Marriott's Way that you will see are more kind of informal access points onto Marriott's Way into the development in kind of due course. So as I said, really trying to maximise accessibility and kind of connectivity. So this next slide is really just looking at the indicative master plan and how it's given thought to potentially where some of the local play areas are. Not that it's necessarily tied at this point, but the two different colours are just looking at the different types of play areas, sort of equipped and kind of more younger play areas. So I think probably the key takeaway there is the kind of quantum of play areas and kind of the spacing and kind of them not being condensed into one particular area. So I think a positive of the master plan. Next slide is really just to show the plan works to Marriott's Way. So for those of you that know it locally, there has been sections upgraded to date, going back from kind of the Fakenham Road into the kind of city side of it. So what the application will do, will kind of deliver improvements through the existing kind of Marriott's Way at Thorpe Marriott, and then through and into the site and kind of beyond. So again, looking to improve that as a kind of leisure facility, and also in terms of kind of connectivity. Next slide is really just looking at, you saw on some of the earlier photographs, the bunding. So as part of the noise survey that was kind of conducted, there's a need to kind of upgrade the existing bunding. So hopefully you can kind of see on the bottom images there, just kind of the sections through the site. So that will increase in height from about 2 metres at present to anywhere between kind of 3.8 and 4 metres. So again, there's that will work from a kind of noise perspective and amenity, applicants also obviously mindful of the need to kind of plant that up, and there'll be a schedule agreed to ensure that that's kind of suitably planted up. Next slide is really just looking at kind of the wider impacts of the scheme on the network. So hopefully you can kind of see from that screen and image that it's not just about the application site. There's been a lot of work that you can just see badged up going outside the application site, kind of along Reefham Road and then into Thorpe Marriott. Things that need to be upgraded and created, again, to really sort of improve that kind of connectivity, look to try and achieve kind of sustainable kind of transport and so on. So a lot of work has got into that, and that's then rehearsed and repeated into the conditions that are in the update sheet that the Highway Authority have sent through. Again, just feeding into kind of sustainable travel and reflecting on the assessment and what's in the update sheet. The two images there are looking at the bus route. So the one on the left is the existing bus route, which kind of loops through Thorpe Marriott. So the idea is, if you look at the right-hand image, that in time that will be able to be expanded out. So it will loop through the new development and again achieve kind of good sustainable transport credentials. Again, you will see from the comments of the Highway Authority, they're looking to condition that in terms of kind of delivery, really try and get that in as early as possible, kind of achieve good habits from the outset. Next slide is really just looking at some of the ecological stuff. So as you'll see from the assessment, the council's ecologist has looked at the application and gone through the various reports. There is a requirement as part of that to look to secure some kind of skylark mitigation. So it's really just to include that slide to show where it is. So it's just to the north of the application site, the other side of Broadland Northway. That is secured as part of the legal agreement. And then just some of the details around kind of the allotment, which is a left-hand side slide. So that's accessed from Breck Farm Lane, which you saw one of the earlier slides. So that's been in conjunction and secured in line with the wishes of the parish council. Right-hand image is that kind of community land, which was just to the north of the Hinks Meadow slide you saw. So you can sort of see that plotted on that. You can kind of get access into that from the Link Road on the western end of the development. And then, as I say, the ultimate aim is for the parish to look to deliver a kind of mugger and building and various facilities on that. And then again, just looking through, as you'll see from the assessment, the applicant has done a lot of work to put a master plan together and a design code for the site. So the next slides are really just some of the images from the design code, really just showing what they're looking to do. So I'll just go through those. So if you look at the kind of left-hand image there, you've got the green dot circle. So it's called the third cover gateway. So this is, as it says on the tin, the gateway into the site. And you can see that kind of image at the bottom there. So as you go into the site, really looking to kind of create a treed avenue into the site. You can see the community land behind that kind of first batch of housing in. And then the next one you can see in the top left image, so it's called the kind of woodland cross. So that's really a line of trees within the site that they're looking to obviously maintain, provide some play areas in amongst it, and really keep that as a strong feature of the site. And then the bottom image is really just trying to visualise that. And then again, some of the other areas, I won't dwell too much on this, but it's a similar theme, but I think it just leads into the idea that the scheme is trying to retain trees that exist. And probably one of the key things that runs through some of these images on the bottom is you can see that the housing is kind of facing outwards onto these areas, sort of avoiding that awkward relationship if you start to put back gardens onto it, where you've kind of got fencing against it, issues with maintenance and the impacts on future residents. So it's kind of outward facing, which I think is a positive. Again, same concept with kind of Marriott's Way. It's badged up there, so you can see on that bottom image the existing Marriott's Way, things forward facing onto it rather than backing. and you can kind of see on that bottom image that idea that you will kind of have some kind of walkway around there as a kind of feature of the scheme to kind of create circular routes for people to enjoy for recreation, dog walking, and kind of so on. Same thing again. I'll just whisk through these. So this is again out, probably one of the key ones, the opposite of the fir covert road end. So this is the gateway in from kind of Reefham road end. So again, properties set back from that, you have kind of landscaping at the front, properties facing on, and then you work your way into the site. And then that image on the bottom, you can just kind of see in the top left hand of that, the edge of the existing development on Thorpe Marriott, and that kind of tree belt that you saw in one of the earlier images. So retaining that, and again, having kind of forward-facing properties out onto it. So moving on from some of those kind of key features, the design code has really kind of broken it down in sort of housing terms and build form terms into kind of three areas. So if we look at the first one, that's called the kind of croft, so that picks up the kind of western half of the development. So looking at kind of potential house types that you would use, you've kind of got the image across the bottom that's looking at the various kind of different sizes and scales of property, ranging from kind of your chalet type properties up into the more kind of apartment block development. And then if we just move through to kind of visualization that's just within the design code. So again, just to give you a flavour of the work that's gone into it. And then we're then into kind of the second area within the design code, built form wise, so that kind of central strip either side of Marriott's Way. So it's kind of looking at a sort of more industrially heritage type stuff. So again, you've kind of got those images again ranging from kind of the smaller residential properties through to that kind of more mixed use forms. I guess the interesting one is that bottom right one, bearing in mind this kind of picks up the local centre and some of those kind of potentially kind of mixed use forms. So it might be kind of shop units at ground floor and residential above. And then again, just a visualisation of how that may kind of pan out. And then the final one, which is kind of eastern end of the development. So again, known as rural pastures in the design code, but probably the key thing again is just to look at some of that kind of imagery there, ranging through from your kind of detached houses through to kind of an apartment form. And then again, just a visualisation of that. And then back to the kind of final slide. So again, hopefully you will kind of see from the assessment that an awful lot of work has kind of gone into that or this over a kind of significant period of time, going back to kind of 2018 when it was kind of first came in as a pre-application scheme. The master plan there is kind of, as I say, trying to seek to show how and lead any subsequent reserve matters. We've kind of gone through some of those kind of key features of the scheme. I think just to bring it back to the kind of planning side of it, you will see from the assessment that it's obviously an emerging allocation within the GNLP, and we're at the point where that kind of journey through the GNLP is fairly well advanced, and the kind of weight we attach to that is kind of fairly significant at this stage. Obviously also not losing sight of the fact that at present we haven't got a land supply, and we're in a position where if we are satisfied that a nutrient neutrality strategy exists, then we can kind of engage the tilted balance. So looking at it from kind of two prongs, it's one that we feel in principle we kind of can take forward at this stage. I think in terms of looking at, as I say, through some of those kind of key issues that we've got in the assessment, if I just kind of go through those. So if we kind of look at the kind of access and highway implications of the scheme, you'll see from the update sheet, and as was referred to in the main assessment, the Highway Authority are kind of happy with the scheme subject to conditions. I think if we kind of break that down into two elements, so in terms of the technical stuff, the access points from kind of Fir Covert Road and Reefham Road and the link road through and all that kind of stuff, then that's fine, and the conditions rehearse that. I think the second thing they've spent a lot of time at looking at is kind of sustainable travel, you will note that the condition and the desire to kind of pick up the early delivery of the link road, which kind of feeds into that kind of updated and upgraded bus service that you've kind of seen. So the Highway Authority have given a lot of thought about that and some of the connections into the adjacent scheme, some of those off-site highway works to really, get those kind of strong credentials. So in terms of kind of access in the broadest sense, the Highway Authority are happy with it. I think in terms of kind of character, visual impact and stuff, again, you will have seen from the earlier images, the land is kind of sandwiched in between the broader Northway at the north, Thorpe Marriott to the south. So it kind of does almost feel isolated from the kind of countryside beyond. So I think it is a kind of good site in that sense, and actually avoids any real kind of substantial moves out into the kind of countryside. And I think what the master plan and the design code does is kind of give a really kind of strong way forward for the site through subsequent reserve matters. So I think in that sense, bearing in mind it is an outline, I think this will be able to kind of shape those subsequent applications. I think in terms of affordable housing, you'll obviously see from the assessment, we're looking to deliver affordable housing as well as the kind of living well units on site. The numbers are all in there, so depending on how you calculate those, you're looking at either 33%, or if you take the figure across the entirety, it's 30%. But I think officers are happy that if you deliver the living well units, then we're happy with the scheme. If they're not delivered, as it says in the assessment, then it will just revert to 33% in that kind of more traditional offering. That's all picked up in the legal agreement. In terms of amenity impacts, obviously it's an outline, so it's difficult to look too much at that. I think the scheme nevertheless has thought about the kind of properties around the perimeter in terms of kind of separation distances and so on. So I don't think there's any great concerns there. If you kind of look at amenity in the broader sense again, that I touched upon the bund being upgraded, mindful of potential noise impacts, so that the noise assessment has kind of been done and subject to conditions that's kind of acceptable, and just kind of following on from that. Again, the work has been done in kind of terms of air pollution and so on, so that's replicated through into a condition as well. Flood risk, again, full flood risk assessment's been done. There's been discussions with the lead local flood authority who've kind of looked through the technical detail. As you'll see from the listed conditions, they're happy subject to final details being submitted. That's separated out into link road and everything else. Ecology, again, lots of work has been kind of done on that. Such that the council's ecologists now happy with the scheme, subject to conditions. And then probably just the final thing is kind of thinking about impact on trees and so on. I think hopefully from the image you can see on screen, that has been kind of heavily thought about. Separation distances exist such that when the reserve matters comes forward, you won't have any significant issues with trees. They're very much outward facing, and kind of separation distances exist. So I guess in summary, it takes us to a point where we're satisfied the principle of the scheme is acceptable to bring forward, bearing in mind where we are with kind of land supply, and where we are in terms of the kind of emerging allocation, and I think in terms of those kind of universal issues that I've just kind of gone through, access, amenity, ecology and so on, I think all of those have been kind of sufficiently dealt with. I think the emerging allocation looks quite heavily at master planning and looking at setting a kind of tone for subsequent reserve matters, and I think that we're in that point where that's in a good place and achieved it. So really subject to those kind of conditions that are listed, we're satisfied that officers that it's acceptable. I think just to go through some of those conditions, because I think, as you'll appreciate, there is an awful lot of them. It might just be helpful to maybe just go through and whiz through some of those very quickly. That's in the agenda paper, so you're looking at page kind of 61. So you've got the first few are more kind of standard ones, as you imagine, kind of time limits and approved plans and so on. So I won't necessarily dwell too much on that. You've then got kind of condition 5. So that's really just going back to that point of a lot of work has been kind of done on the design code and the master plan, making sure that when reserve matters come in that they kind of have to show how their scheme kind of complies with it, just so that you don't have a scenario where the schemes are kind of diluted down from what's envisaged. You've then got condition about kind of noise and dust. So again, just looking at those impacts of the kind of construction phase. You've got one on self-build archaeology. You've then got one on kind of landscaping details to be agreed. I think just on that point, there's a few of those ones that are looking at kind of to be agreed. We will look at kind of the trigger points for those conditions. So some of them will either be as part of reserve matters, again, just to make sure that there's no kind of later issues with that or kind of prior to commencement. You've got kind of condition 11, just to explain that one, you've kind of got a contribution from kind of decentralised and renewable energy. So that's really asking the applications and applicants in due course to demonstrate that. So it may well be on the kind of residential schemes like things like solar panels, air source heat pumps, again, just looking at kind of renewables in that sense. Condition 12 is just looking at kind of water consumption, so a requirement for all properties to kind of look at 105 litres per day. Next batch is fairly typical, is what it says on the tin. Condition 17, probably just worth picking that up. So there's a condition there just to look at the kind of phasing plan tied to SIL. So that's just being mindful of how SIL is paid, and just trying to kind of structure it around that. It's one we've kind of seen happen retrospectively across various permissions, so it seemed to make sense to bring it in there. 19, kitchen extraction, that's really just looking at the potential local centre in due course, if you've got kind of any food establishments or anything else like that coming through. You've then got a big batch 22 through to 28, which are those that have been requested by the council's ecologists. So again, just making sure that everything's in place in terms of kind of mitigation and enhancement in terms of kind of protected species. And then you have the 2 conditions from the lead local flood authority. So as I said, separated out between the link road and everything else. And then you have a big long list of conditions that are within the update sheet that pick up all matters kind of relating to kind of highway safety. In addition, you've obviously got a legal agreement that pick up various bits and pieces. So if I just highlight what that picks up, so you've kind of got affordable housing, including the kind of self-build side of it. So looking forward at some of the policies in the emerging GNLP, you've kind of got 5% of the total will come forward as self-builds. You've got all the open space picked up as part of the legal agreement, including kind of maintenance contributions and so on. You have the land for the parish and some financial contributions towards the mugger, which is 235,000, and then a financial contribution to providing things on site at 267,000. You then have the land for the kind of community hub, which is in the centre of the site, so that will kind of be handed over in due course. Same for the allotments. You have a contribution for recreational avoidance mitigation, so that's a per dwelling amount at £185. You have a travel plan and bond requirement that's come via the Highway Authority, and then you have the Skylark compensation land that I kind of picked up earlier, and then potentially, just as a final point, the nutrient neutrality strategy. So as you'll see from the assessment, it's presently looking at a kind of a multi-pronged approach. So some septic tank replacement at the Taverham Garden Centre that you saw in one of the earlier slides, and some fallowing of land. So depending on how that's bottomed out with Natural England in due course, and again the resolution reflects that needs to be bottomed out, that may or may not be a combination of legal agreement and kind of conditions. So really we're in a place where officers are happy with it, as the resolution says, subject to nutrient neutrality being resolved with Natural England, and the Highway Authority being satisfied in terms of discussions on the bus side of it. So yeah, recommendation of approval subject to conditions and legal agreement. Yeah, and then just on a final point, you'll see from the update sheet there was reference to the EIA side of things. So I think as highlighted in the main assessment, it is the subject of an environmental statement which has picked up various kind of constraints such as flood risk, transport assessment and so on. So officers have been kind of mindful of that, and it's referred to in the update sheet.
Thank you very much to the officer for the planning presentation, and I'd like to say thank you as well for the update on all of the conditions that we were presented with, in particular the details on the highway conditions that we have, which is really helpful. Do any of the committee members have questions for the planning officer? Councillor Alba.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I've just got a couple of clarification questions, really. On the Fir Covert Road roundabout, there looks like an entrance into a garden centre. Is that actually going to link up with the entrance to that?
Yeah, so if you can probably just see on that image on the screen, actually, on the sort of left-hand side. So for those of you that know it, I think that aligns with where you kind of go in at present now, as I understand it. So, yeah.
Great, and the impacts of the garden centre traffic is all being taken into account, and their highways are happy with all of that?
Yeah, I think there's particular mention of that in the kind of update sheet in their comments that came in yesterday. So they kind of have been mindful of that. I think that historically, and some of you may well know it, the sort of Lidl store went in relatively recently, and as a kind of consequence of that, traffic lights were put in on the connection between kind of Fir Covert Road and the Fakenham Road. So I think it was almost, in many ways, kind of future-proofed. That you wouldn't have to do anything kind of significant on that side of it. And I think just on a kind of linked point, again, there's no kind of reliance on kind of the Western Link in any kind of way in terms of the modelling that's happened either.
Councillor Baby.
Thank you, Chair. The report states that the majority of the site is within the flood zone 1. If the development happens, it does impact on the neighboring property.
So I think, as you said, it's obviously in flood zone 1, so sort of the lowest flood risk kind of area. I think, notwithstanding that, the nature and scale of the site is such that it's had a kind of full flood risk assessment that's kind of coming in support, which will kind of look at the impacts on kind of surface water drainage. So it's really one that Lead Local Flood Authority and their kind of technical capacity are satisfied there isn't any kind of issues to do with kind of displacement or anything like that from a surface water perspective. Again, you will see from the list of conditions we've kind of gone through that there's a requirement to kind of provide final details based upon the kind of flood risk assessment that's kind of submitted. So I think kind of in technical terms, officers are comfortable there isn't any particular issue for any existing residents there.
Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you. My question is about timing and time conditions in the reserved matters applications. I presume, are we expecting the reserved matters application to come forward for the entire site all at the same time?
I wouldn't have thought so. I think it'll come forward in kind of phases. Is the indication of that? I think it's a good point insofar as that, given the scale of the development, then it's envisaged the time limit will probably be slightly longer than you normally would in terms of putting subsequent reserve matters in. So I think it's not been finalised yet, but it'll probably be more than the usual, just to take account of the scale and multiple phases coming in. So it might be something like you've kind of got up to 10 years to put it in, something like that, but we'll bottom that out in due course.
I think my point is because there's so much infrastructure that's being delivered across the site, across the entire site, and if that's split up into various phases, guess what? I would like to see you as officers negotiate on quite determinedly is to make sure that the site, they don't just deliver like a 250 house parcel of it and then the rest of it falls fallow. That there are actually clauses in either you either condition it or that there's clauses in 106 or some other legal agreements to ensure that the rest of the site does get delivered, that the reserve matters do come forward, and that the whole site is produced at some point, and that we don't end up just with a small bit that doesn't trigger any sort of large infrastructure, and then the rest of it doesn't perform for us here in Broadland, because we do need the housing. I think that's obvious, and this is a really good place to deliver a lot of really necessary housing for the district. I'm just concerned that because of the size of it and because the time conditions aren't terribly well pinned together and stitched together, that we might end up with not enough or very little.
I think it probably goes back to, I think it's probably a good point in terms of just separating out what we kind of probably can and can't control. So we can't in any way control that stuff has to necessarily kind of be delivered. I think the one thing we do control, and I think what this scheme is kind of doing and the conditions will do, is make sure some of the infrastructure is kind of delivered as early as possible to avoid that scenario you've rightly highlighted, that if you put those kind of thresholds too high, then someone will kind of just build up to the yon side of the threshold, and then you kind of don't deliver them. So as a kind of example, you can't build more than, in terms of the conditions, I think 275 houses without the link road kind of being in. So it's thinking about things like that again. Some of the delivery of like the community land and that kind of stuff is quite early within the scheme, bearing in mind they're kind of in the centre of the site. You won't necessarily be able to get to them until the link road is in. So I think it's a fair point. I think in terms of what we can control and what we can't, a lot of the infrastructure and stuff is very early into the site, a bit like the bus service side of it again. Highway Authority are keen to see that put in early as possible, to just try and get that kind of infrastructure in place, and then hopefully the scheme will come forward. But we're not in a position where we could kind of say, well, they've got to make sure they build it all out in a particular time frame, because that will be beyond the scope of planning.
So with the link roads being delivered, the link road being delivered as early as it is with a really low trigger, are we, for clarity, are we expecting any viability arguments to come forward in terms of other 106 contributions that we're asking them to make? Because roads aren't cheap to deliver, I think that's obvious. And because the triggers are so low at 270 houses, that's next to nothing, really. For clarity, has this been thought through properly in terms of other 106 contributions we're expecting, or do we get this application back at committee at a future date where the developer throws their hands in the air and says we can't afford to do any of this?
Yeah, I mean, there's not necessarily been any suggestion that it's not viable. I mean, I think in terms of all those kind of things in a viability argument, they're kind of all costs that you would expect to see, because you've kind of got to deliver the road to kind of access everything, and in effect it will be kind of reflected in kind of the value of the site. So there's not necessarily any particular indication that it's not going to deliver what it said. I mean, again, it's one of those ones that once the legal agreement is signed for all of those things, then it can only be changed at the council's agreement for a period of 5 years anyway. So there's no way you can kind of come back and make that argument unless we want to accept it. So I don't think so. I think it has been given a lot of thought, and again, that kind of goes back in some respects to the allocation. So we shouldn't be allocating it if we think there's going to be a massive kind of viability issue. So there's nothing yet to clarify your point. There's not been any indication that you won't be able to kind of deliver it as a viable scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Orber.
Thank you, Chair. When you were talking about the buses, that reminded me about the Marriott's Way upgrade, and maybe I've missed it in the paperwork, but do we know when that work's going to be done? Because I'm quite keen to get that done as early as possible, just like the bus routes, to encourage people to use the cycle path. And I know Marriott's Way is a bit of a mud bath there, so getting that done as early as possible as well would really be very much appreciated.
You've asked me something I don't know the answer to. I don't know off the top of my head. I know the applicant's speaking, so they might well be able to clarify that. But I think just on that point, they've kind of done a lot of work in terms of the spec on that to kind of understand where it's got to be resurfaced. But in addition to that, as some of you will know, there's various kind of connection points to that. So it also includes kind of upgrades to kind of some of the stepped areas down to it and stuff like that. So it's a bit more than just resurfacing it to kind of give it its full credit. But yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm sure they'll know the answer.
Do we have any more questions for the officer? Okay, so now we'll move on to public speaking. According to my list, we don't have any objectors registered to speak, so we now go to supporters. And do we have Mr. Ian Hill here? Thank you. Do come up to the public speaking section and thank you. So, Mr. Hill, you have 5 minutes from when you start speaking. We'll give you notice when there's just 1 minute left. And when you start to speak, please could you introduce yourself and your role? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name's Ian Hill from Bidwell's, planning agent for the application. I'm also joined by Martin Scott from Scott Properties, who are the applicants. The report provided by your officer, as well as today's presentation, are very comprehensive. Accordingly, we do not propose to repeat many of the points that have been raised. However, we'd like to briefly highlight a few points. The application before you has been shaped by extensive consultation with key stakeholders over a period of approximately 5 years, including the promotion of the site through the preparation of the Greater Norwich Local Plan. The site will help deliver a key part of the emerging Greater Norwich Local Plan's growth and has been allocated given it is a suitable and sustainable location for the nature of the development proposed. The limited number of objections to the scheme highlights the willingness of the applicant to engage and listen to key stakeholders. For example, Taverham Parish Council made it clear from an early stage that rather than have formal pitches on the site, they prefer a mugger, which could satisfy the needs of a broad range of the community. In addition, the Parish Council requested an extension to the existing facility at Hinks Meadow, as well as allotments. All of these requests have been incorporated into the development. These are just some of the community benefits that will be delivered by the development. The proposals make provision for a primary school, a local centre, a medical and community centre, as well as extensive green infrastructure, helping to enable the creation of a strong, vibrant and healthy community with easy access to local services and facilities. The scheme has been designed to comply with and in many cases exceed the policy requirements of the emerging GNLP. The illustrative master plan we've seen demonstrates how the scheme can provide green infrastructure in excess of policy whilst also facilitating enhanced connectivity with the surrounding area, including the upgrading of a large section of Marriott's Way. As we have heard, the proposal will provide policy-compliant levels of affordable housing. This will include a range of dwelling types to meet an identified local need, including specialist care accommodation. The proposals have been fully supported by the Council's Housing Enabling Officer. The proposals will give rise to significant benefits to the local economy, both through the creation of employment opportunities during the construction phase, as well as through the range of uses provided within the development, including school, medical facility and local centre. Whilst the development of any greenfield site, particularly of this scale, will inevitably result in change to the appearance of the site and its surroundings, the site is well contained within the landscape and will have minimal visual impact. In addition, development in this location is not particularly sensitive in terms of the natural, built or historic environment. Furthermore, whilst an outline application, an illustrative master plan has been submitted with the application, which demonstrates through measures such as the landscape buffer on the site's northern boundary and the enhancement and reinforcement of existing landscape features, a high quality landscape mixed-use development can be delivered on the site. Again, as we've heard, the applicant is keen to ensure that the development creates a high quality environment in which to live, work and which is acceptable to both the existing and future of the community. As a result, the application is supported by a design code which will be secured by way of a condition. This establishes a set of rules and standards that will govern future reserve matters applications. Again, as we've heard, the highway and access strategy is supported by Norfolk County Council Highways. The proposals include significant off-site highway works that will enhance connectivity with the wider area, helping to promote walking and cycling. In addition, an enhanced bus service for Tavern will be provided as part of the development. To conclude, the proposal seeks to deliver a high-quality, mixed-use sustainable development for which there is an identified need on a site allocated in the emerging Greater Norwich local plan. It is evident based on the materials submitted in support of the application and the responses that have been received from key stakeholders that the proposal does not give rise to any adverse harm. In light of the above, we respectfully request that you endorse the recommendation of your officer and support the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the committee members? Councillor Orber.
Thank you. So, I'm really pleased with the site. Can you answer the question about the Marriott's Way, when that's going to be upgraded?
Yeah, certainly. Sorry, Martin Scott, so I'm the Managing Director of Scott Properties. In terms of Marriott's Way, it was actually within the 106, it was included to be the repair works to be delivered by completion of 75% of the dwellings on the development as a whole. That wasn't that we were deliberately trying to leave it late, it was more about how we integrate it, because as Mr. Rain mentioned, you've got the connection points with stairways, so it needs to be timely in terms of the development coming forward in that central area. So it's no later than, and certainly from discussions, it is something that we'd look to do as early as we possibly can, but it just needs to be timely in terms of linking things in. So yeah, that was the, sorry, I hope that explains it.
Thank you. Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a clarification, and it may have been covered, but as we know, I missed it. There was a concern by Clancy and Kelly about the community not including the healthcare facility. Has that been covered? Perhaps I should have referred that to the officer, but I'm not sure whether you mentioned it. If you did,
No, that's fine. No, that's fine. It's not. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. So it was obviously in the update sheet, as you rightly say. Councillor Clancy and Kelly just queried the delivery of the kind of health community hub that you can kind of see on the centre of the screen. I think the update sheet really just to sort to clarify what the planning process can deliver and kind of what it can't. So the planning process is very much about delivering the land to kind of facilitate it. I think Councillor Clancy's points were more about kind of delivery, which is really beyond the scope of the planning permission. And I think as is in the update sheet, that's really one that it'll be for discussions between the council and some of the kind of key stakeholders at kind of the NHS and stuff to look forward to kind of to delivering it. So it's the planning permission has delivered what it needs to, and it's really just about kind of delivery. So I think it's answered in the update sheet, but hopefully that kind of answers it as well.
The point we make is that this has been in for discussion for 4 years. 4 years of
yeah.
negotiation, there's no firm or legal binding and fully funded.
Sorry, just on that matter, the planning permission needs to secure the service land for any future health facilities and community facilities. The negotiations relating to how that may deliver is outside of the local planning authority's scope. So those are ongoing. There is a discussion that the council is having, as Chris said, with all the relevant stakeholders, but this permission doesn't need to deliver it. It needs to make sure we have a service piece of land for any future uses to come forward, and that is secured in the legal agreement. So this permission is making sure, which is a really important consideration, that there is a piece of land serviced that those future uses can come forward on. There is no requirement of the landowner to deliver that. That is a separate discussion that the council is having and is still ongoing.
It's still ongoing.
Yes.
Thank you. We also have Mr. Scott, who's registered to speak. Would you like to speak? Yes. Thank you. You have 5 minutes from when you begin, and we'll give you notice when you have just 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I think I butted in before my allocated time on the in-space, but is it all right if I just pick up a few of the points that the councillors have raised under the earlier discussion? I think Councillor Orby, you asked also about the entrance to the garden centre. You're right, that is exactly where well, it's just very adjacent to where the existing entrance is, and we're actually upgrading all of that entrance to give a safe sort of parking area, if you like, as you come up to the gate. So all of that will be revamped. You know, there's brick walls, there's lighting, all of that coming through as part of this scheme. So it's a complete upgrade on there. I think hopefully I'd already answered the point about Marriott's Way. Councillor Baby asked about the flood and the soakage. We've carried out some very detailed ground investigations, so we've prepared a very detailed scheme which has been signed off by the LLFA. So that's been widespread with trenching carried out, you know, in various areas of the site to ascertain the conditions. So that's been taken to a very detailed stage. Councillor Hempsall, the valid points about the front loading of the infrastructure. But I think, to be honest, we've known about this from very early stages. It was raised initially with workshops that were held with the parish council and with highways. So we've understood this from day one, that we must deliver the spine road. And actually, as part of delivering the spine road, obviously we're bringing through the services, and that's where the land becomes available for the community hub and the school. So everything has been built in. There's triggers within the 106 for actually timely, you know, everything naturally comes forward within that 2 year period. You've got, you know, the allotments, you've got the land for Hinks Meadow, the school, the service site that Councillor Leggett brought up, you know, about for the community hub. They're all coming forward. So there isn't a viability question on those. We've built them in, we've understood it, and that's our commitment. Well, hopefully, and I think obviously the point Councillor Leggett brought up, I think we've hopefully that was satisfactory, that explanation. We've been involved in those discussions, but in terms, our involvement has really been about providing the appropriate site in the appropriate location with the services, the accessibility, and also to look at the detailed timing of when is the earliest that could come forward. And obviously we're working with all the parties involved as well to assist wherever we can, but the actual delivery, as pointed out, will come, you know, that's being dealt with by the council under. Sorry, that was all I had picked up, unless there's anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions from members of the committee? No, I just have one question. The planning authority can only require 10% of energy requirements to be via renewable or decentralised energy. Do you envisage, though, that it might be higher than 10%?
To be honest, this will really depend as the reserve matters come forward. Obviously, we like to overachieve rather than underachieve. I can't give you any guarantee on exact numbers. You know, I think if it's similar, you know, because also we've got similar requirements with biodiversity net gain. We're looking to achieve over 10% biodiversity net gain. So, but, you know, where I am today, I can't guarantee you that, but it will certainly be our aim to achieve the highest we sensibly can.
Thank you. And do you envisage that might possibly apply to the affordable housing and the care home as well?
Yeah, yes I do.
Thank you. Any further questions at all for our speakers? No? Well, thank you very much for coming. Thank you. We now, as part of the public speaking, have an application made by Councillor Caroline Karimi Guvanlu, who would like to speak as the local district member. So we're just asking her to return to the room. Thank you, Councillor. You have 5 minutes from when you start to speak.
Thank you. I am here today in my capacity as a District Councillor for Taverham North, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Marriott's Park. The proposed development of up to 1,500 new homes, a primary school, a community and retail hub, a health centre, extra care units, open spaces, landscaping and environmental works is a significant step towards meeting the housing needs of the area, and I believe it will bring many benefits to Taverham. The Taverham Neighbourhood Plan was adopted by Broadland District Council in July 2021, following an 86% vote by Taverham residents. The plan covers up to 2040 and forms part of the development plan for the area. It is therefore one of the main considerations in determining any future planning applications submitted in Taverham, and this development is fully supported within that plan. The National Planning Policy Framework requires local authorities to plan positively for the development and infrastructure in their area, including housing, employment, and other uses such as retail and community facilities. The proposed development aligns with these requirements. The Greater Norwich Local Plan is a key document that sets out the planning policies for Norwich. The absence of any significant harm is evidenced by the fact that this scheme meets the relevant criteria contained in the emerging GNLP allocation, which officers consider can be afforded significant weight in the decision-making process. In conclusion, the proposed Marriott Park development in Taverham aligns with the Taverham Neighbourhood Plan, the NPPF and the GNLP. It is a significant step towards meeting the housing needs of the area and will provide much needed infrastructure, including a primary school, a community hub, stroke health care centre and extra care units. I urge you to support this development and help secure a brighter future for Taverham. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for coming to speak. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned the Taverham Neighbourhood Plan. Has the Parish Council considered what they're going to spend the enhanced hill contributions that they will receive as a result of the Neighbourhood Plan yet?
Not exactly. We will be providing some recreation facilities and also the building of a new parish council office, which we don't have at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions at all? No? Well, thanks for coming to speak. So that brings us to the end of this public speaking session. We now move into committee for comments, discussion and voting. Would anyone like to speak? Yes, Councillor Hempsall.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'd like to congratulate the officers and actually the members who are involved in bringing this to committee today, because it's been a long time coming, from inception into all the consultations, and actually to the developers as well, because I know that you have really engaged on this development. I'm really pleased to see that some of the key infrastructure is front-loaded, and especially things like the Link Road and the accessibility to the Thorpe, to the Marriott's Way. I think what I'd also like to see, because the impacts on the road network, as is outlined in the report, are not insignificant. So I'd really like to encourage that as part of the reserved matters applications, that the officers very much support any additionality to active travel, and indeed any buy-in to micromobility schemes, because the more people we can encourage from this estate to go around the estate itself, by active travel means either walking or cycling or anything else that's available, the better. It's not just a case of removing carbon out of the environment, which I know is a consideration because we're all working towards net zero. I guess the point of view I'm coming from is reducing congestion on the roads and increasing the health of the residents there, because I think that's an important consideration as we move, we stride into this new century, that the health and physical activity of future residents is very much taken into consideration when we plan our environments. So on that basis, I'm really pleased with this application, and I'd like to move the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hempsall, and thank you for the proposal to move the recommendation. We will see if there's a seconder, but then remain in discussion until we have completed those discussions. So, Councillor Orber.
Can I just second what Lana said, that it seems a very well thought through application. Love the fact that there's been a lot of discussion with the community to help design this. Of course, I want to see the Marriott's Way upgraded as soon as possible, because I think that will help the traffic flows, and I have, like everyone else, have quite concerns about the extra traffic on the Reefham Road and Fir Covert Road. But I'm very happy to support this and happy to second the recommendation, the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Orber. Do we have any more comments or points from the committee members? No, I'd just like to make some points, if I may. I recognise that this is a development that is actually outside the defined settlement limit of Taverham, but it is allocated in the emerging GNLP, which will soon be adopted in spring 2024. It does have 2 access points, good connectivity to the site, and I'm pleased to see that a considerable number of highway conditions have come through, and a lot of thought has been given to the access to the site, both within and without it. Like others, I'm very pleased to see there's been extensive consultation with the community, the parish council and the district council, and
the local district councillor is very supportive. There's very good provision in this development for active travel, which links into existing routes such as the Marriott's Way. And in effect, the master plan does create a 20-minute neighbourhood with services which are accessible via pedestrian and cycle routes. The provision for an enhanced bus service that should be in very soon when the development begins is a very positive step. There's provision for EV charging. I'm pleased to see the recognition of the need for biodiversity net gain, as that doesn't actually come in until January 24, so that's good to see that, and it would be great to see potential provision of above 10% net gain if that's possible. And I'm also pleased to see the provision of living well units to reflect the changing demography of the population in Norfolk, as well as seeing traditional affordable units. I do note the concerns that have been raised about the provision of primary health care, the demand on ambulance services and demand on the police services. These have been addressed in part. They are issues of concern, but they're not reasons for objecting to this planning application. There is a point made on page 19 of the report that it's likely many journeys to work could be made by car. And as has been pointed out, that will impact on road congestion and also on air quality. I'm pleased, as others are, to see active travel provision put in very much at the centre of this development from the beginning. I hope that this will take us away from a focus on non-car modes. It remains to be seen whether that will actually happen. I also note the concerns about habitat loss and the effect on biodiversity, and in particular on the Marriott's Way. We have to recognise that this site, this development, is on greenfield land, and the loss of any countryside and habitat is of great concern. But overall, none of the consultees are maintaining any objections. It's clear that the issues raised can be mitigated for, so I don't think it's perfect, but on balance, I do support it. Do we have any more points from the committee before we vote? So we have a proposal from Councillor Lana Hempsall that's been seconded by Councillor Paul Auber that we propose that this development plan is approved. So all in favour, please raise their hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That application has been approved. We will now take